The hour hand had long since devoured the final moments of the day, yet Jason remained absent. My gaze drifted once more to the timepiece mounted on the wall. A relic of shared decisions, purchased in sunnier days. Before I let my eyes fall shut rising from the couch, I prepared to retreat into the hollow silence of our bedroom. Then the door groaned open. Jason stumbled across the threshold, his weight crashing against the wood as he slammed it behind him. The rustle of him kicking off his shoes whispered through the room, like fallen leaves. Light flooded the space as he flicked the switch, and for one suspended heartbeat, our eyes locked. He paused, a statue caught mid-motion, before his gaze slid away, casual as a practiced lie. "Still up?" he mumbled, the words slurry and detached. I didn't answer. Instead, I drifted closer, until the air between us thickened with the cloying scent of whiskey, and regret. My voice emerged steady. A calm surface over dark water. "Out drinking again?" He offered a vague, lopsided shrug, his eyes glazed and distant. Without another word, he turned and vanished into the bathroom, shutting the door with a finality that swallowed all sound. I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on the coat he'd discarded on the sofa. I lifted it, the fabric heavy with the night's secrets, and dropped it into the hamper. And then, a sharp, metallic clink, a tube of lipstick, crimson and accusatory, rolled across the floor and came to rest at my feet. I crouched down and picked it up. The lipstick was broken. I looked at it for a moment, then tossed it into the trash. This wasn't the first time. I didn't even need to guess who it belonged to. I took a deep breath and looked toward the bedroom where a soft, dim orange glow peeked out from under the door. Back in the room, Jason came out with his hair still wet. He paused when he saw my expressionless face. The drunken haze in his eyes cleared completely. He pulled me into his arms with a low, murmured voice. "I'm sorry, I'll come back earlier next time." I didn't say a word. I lifted my hand trying to push him away, but Jason only held me tighter in silence. I lowered my gaze and took a deep breath, catching the scent of his body wash. After a while, I finally spoke. "I found a lipstick in your pocket just now." Jason immediately let go of my arms. He looked frustrated and ran a hand through his hair. Looking at me with what seemed like sincerity, he said, "You know how they are always pulling stunts like this?" I looked into his eyes, trying to find even a trace of a lie. After a long silence, it was Jason who looked away first. I looked at his turned face and gave a small nod, getting my response. Jason let out a breath of relief and pulled me into his arms again. I didn't resist. I just leaned against his chest in this embrace I had loved for 7 years. For the last time, I whispered that to myself in my heart. The next morning, Jason was already gone. Even the warmth on his side of the bed had faded like usual. I washed up, got dressed, put on my shoes and went out like usual. I went to class and left class since I didn't have evening classes today. I left school early. I had planned to go to the supermarket to buy some groceries and make dinner, but just as I reached the entrance, I received a message from Jason: "Having dinner with the guys tonight. I'll be home late." I turned off my phone and didn't go into the supermarket. I turned around and went home. I ate a simple meal and was getting ready to go to bed when my phone rang again. It was another message from Jason: "Pick me up at the usual place." Okay, I stared at the screen. Another message popped up: "I'll wait for you." I pressed my lips together, then finally, okay. I drove to the bar, parked the car and made my way inside like I'd done so many times before. When I got to the door of the private room, just as I was about to push it open, I heard the clear voices from inside. "It's been 7 years, and you still haven't married her." My hand froze in midair. After a long pause, I finally heard Jason's slightly airy voice. "We'll see then." One of his friends spoke again. "So what about that assistant of yours? Aren't you afraid your girlfriend might find out?" Jason's voice was calm and steady. "What about her?" "There's nothing going on between us." The guys around him let out scattered chuckles. One of them asked, "It's been 7 years already. Don't you feel any urgency?" Jason gave a light laugh, his tone casual and lazy. "Who says dating for 7 years means you have to get married? I just enjoy being in a relationship. I'm not thinking about marriage." As soon as he said that, I lowered the hand I had been about to use to push the door open. My eyes dropped, and the hand at my side slowly clenched, then slowly. I didn't storm in to confront him. I didn't scream or argue. I just quietly turned around and walked away. I drove home calmly. The apartment was dark when I arrived. Just then, another message from Jason popped up on my phone. "Baby, aren't you coming yet?" I stared at the screen, then turned it off. I went to the bedroom and started packing. In less than 30 minutes, I had gathered all of my belongings just as I was about to leave, dragging a suitcase and carrying bags. The front door opened. Jason walked in and saw me standing there with all my luggage. He frowned. "Where are you going?" I didn't bother with small talk at the entryway. I bent down and changed into my shoes, then pulled the suitcase past him. Jason grabbed my arm hard. "I'm asking you, where are you going?" I turned to look at him, my voice flat, as if I were simply commenting on the weather. "Do you really need me to spell it out?" I tried to pull my arm free, but Jason only gripped it tighter. I turned fully to face him. We're adults, do we have to make this ugly? Jason met my cold, expressionless gaze and froze for a moment. His hand loosened unconsciously. But quickly he reacted the same way he always did, pulling me tightly into his arms. There's nothing going on between me and that assistant. He said, did you hear some rumors or something? I stayed silent. Jason took that as a sign I was listening. If you don't like Zoe, I'll transfer her to another department right away. Before he could even finish his sentence, I shoved him hard. He wasn't expecting it, and stumbled back several steps. I stared at him, forcing my eyes wide open, but I still couldn't stop the sting in my nose. Jason, I don't care what kind of crap is going on between you and that assistant. I paused, took a deep breath and said, this time I'm the one breaking up with you. During the week after I broke up with Jason, I went to work and came home just like always. Life stayed calm and ordinary, but there's always someone who won't let things stay peaceful. When I saw Zoe sitting in my office chair, an unexplainable wave of anger rose in my chest. The other teachers in the office noticed me standing at the door and quickly picked up their things. Miss Lynn, one of them said, this lady said she wanted to see you two talk. I'm heading to class. I smiled at him and nodded, then closed the door behind him. After he left, Zoe stood up and greeted me with an overly friendly tone. Hi, Lynn, I'm sorry to bother you. I stayed cold and blunt. You knew, and you still came. Zoe paused, clearly flustered under my glare. If you're here to talk to me about Jason, you can leave now, I said, showing no mercy. She stood there frozen, eyes turning red without me even noticing. Lynn, I'm really sorry about everything with Mr. Reed. Could you not break up with him because of me? That sentence nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. Zoe, my breakup with Jason is between me and him. It has nothing to do with you. I looked at her, trying to calm the storm in my heart. Zoe acted like she didn't understand anything I had said. Suddenly, she grabbed my wrist. Lynn, there's really nothing between me and Mr. Reed. I'll admit I had feelings for him before, but he turned me down. Clearly as she spoke, she lowered her head, looking dejected. That lipstick I did toss into his pocket. He didn't know anything about it. Listening to her, I felt surprisingly calm. Yeah, I know. Zoe looked up at me, visibly flustered, but I remained expressionless and firm. If you're done, you can leave now. But instead of leaving, she clutched at my sleeve. What about you and Mr. Reed? I forcefully shook off her hand, my voice still composed. I already told you whatever is or isn't going on between you two. I don't care. My breakup with him is between me and him. Zoe was stunned by my words. She looked at me with wide eyes. Momentarily speechless, I pressed my lips together and, without the slightest courtesy, pointed at the door. Miss Zoe, you can go now. She stared at me, hesitated, but in the end, she turned and walked out. That evening, after finishing night classes, I had just walked out of the school gates when I saw Jason waiting at the entrance. I wasn't surprised at all. I tried to walk past him, but Jason wasn't about to let me go. He caught up and grabbed me, his voice calm but laced with frustration. Didn't Zoe explain things to you? I looked up at him under the glow of the street lights. I told you clearly the day we broke up. Whatever happens between you and Zoe has nothing to do with us. Jason's grip on my arm tightened. Don't be like this. I know you're just mad because of her. I really already had her transferred. Don't throw a tantrum, okay? I looked down at his hand holding my arm, then looked back up at him. He stared at me, too, his gaze devoid of the slightest trace of compromise. I reached up with my free hand and slowly pried his fingers off my arm. Jason, I've been playing along with your act for far too long. I let out a cold laugh. So long that you've completely forgotten he was never that foolish girl who existed only for you, who thought you were her entire world. Jason froze, clearly unable to believe what he was hearing. I gave a bitter smile. There's no need for this charade anymore. I won't play along with your performance. In the 7 years I'd been with Jason, it wasn't like we'd never talked about breaking up. The first 4 years, we were like any ordinary couple. We had our little spats, but overall our life was sweet and simple. But after those 4 years, things began to change. In the last 3 years, we argued endlessly about big things, small things, anything. Eventually, we didn't even have the energy to fight anymore. We just sat in silence, facing each other without speaking. I couldn't even pinpoint when it started exactly. Maybe it was after we graduated from college and started working. There was less and less we could talk about. My family was middle class, nothing fancy, but compared to Jason, who had grown up with a silver spoon in his mouth, it was like night and day. We couldn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. If our conversations went too deep, they would always end in a fight over time. I figured it out and just stopped bringing certain things up. I no longer shared everything with him like I used to, but Jason never cared. He kept doing whatever he wanted. He had the kind of background that let him party even after graduation, but I didn't, and yet he'd still act spoiled, always trying to drag me off on some trip. Once it was during finals. Jason suddenly said he wanted to go to Budapest, and no matter what, He insisted I take time off to go with him. I tried to reason with him, asking why he had to go. Then all he did was show me a video of Budapest's night lights. I told him I was busy, final exams were coming up as a teacher. I couldn't just take off and leave. His face turned cold. So you're really not going? I was exhausted. I shook my head. I really can't. Jason didn't say anything after that. I thought he dropped it, but when I got home the next day after work, he was gone. I only found out from his social media that he had already flown off to Budapest with his friends. He had just brought it up the day before and now he was already there. I didn't even know when he had applied for the visa. That's when it hit me. Jason had never planned on bringing me along in the first place. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone behind my back and arranged everything without telling me. And when he came back, he still acted like I didn't know a thing. You didn't want to go, so I just went with them. Jason pushed his suitcase aside. Not even glancing at me, I watched his movement silently for a while but said nothing in the end. I didn't call him out on it when he saw that I wasn't questioning anything. Jason finally looked up and his eyes were filled with the confidence of someone who believed he'd won. That was when I first sensed it deep down. He was becoming more convinced that I was just the same gullible woman who would always quietly go along with whatever he did. That was the first time the idea of breaking up flashed through my mind. It was just a fleeting thought, but it left a deep scar in my heart from then on. We couldn't stop ourselves. Small arguments every 3 days, bigger ones every 10. Even though I learned to avoid certain topics, somehow even things we used to agree on began to shift out off sync. I could feel it clearly. We were drifting farther and farther apart. Maybe Jason felt it too. He started to lose that brazen confidence. He began getting involved in his family's business and stopped wasting his days idly. He started to mature, both in how he treated me and in how he approached life. I could feel his patience growing, his effort becoming more obvious. I thought maybe, just maybe, things were getting better. But then one night after he came back from a business dinner, I caught a complex mixed scent clinging to him: alcohol, cigarettes, a woman's perfume, and worst of all, a smudge of dusty rose lipstick on his neck. That was impossible to ignore. It was the first time something like that had happened, and my mind went completely blank. Panic overtook me. Shook Jason awake from where he was nearly passing out on the sofa and snapped at him in a sharp, piercing voice, demanding to know where that lipstick mark had come from. Jason, groggy and confused, rubbed his neck and said casually, "It was just a normal dinner. Can you not twist it into something else? Why do you always make such a big deal out of nothing?" His attitude cut deep. My voice rose. Normal dinner? What kind of normal dinner leaves a lipstick mark on your neck? Even you don't believe the crap you're saying. Jason's voice rose to match mine. Then what do you think it is? If I really did something, do you think I'd bother coming home? His shouting echoed through the room. I stared at him, eyes blurring with tears. Break up. I want to break up. I wiped my tears and turned, heading straight for the bedroom. That was the first time I had ever said I wanted to break up, and meant it. Maybe Jason realized it too. He reached out to stop me, but I instinctively avoided him, holding back tears. I went into the room, tossed a suitcase on the floor and began throwing my clothes into it, one piece at a time, just like some dramatic breakup scene in a TV drama. Just as I was almost done packing, Jason walked in. He looked down at me, crouched on the floor, and suddenly pulled me up. "That's enough. You've made your point. What are you trying to do?" His tone was the same as always. The drunkenness seemed to have completely faded. If I hadn't still smelled the alcohol on him, I would have thought he was completely sober. "Let me go. I don't want to talk to a drunk," I said, pulling my arm away and reaching for the suitcase again. Jason frowned and grabbed me again. "I'm not drunk." I didn't respond, but I kept trying to pull my arm away. He noticed and tightened his grip just as I was about to lose my temper. Jason suddenly hugged me. It wasn't a comforting hug. He pressed my head against his chest, pulling me in so fast that my slippers, the air around his face was filled with a harsh mix of alcohol, smoke, and perfume. I winced at the smell, but I couldn't find the strength to push him away. His arms clung tightly around mine, so tight I could barely breathe. He leaned down slightly, resting his head on my shadiras. He spoke. His breath warmed the side of my neck. I remember he murmured, "I was out of line. I shouldn't have yelled like that just now." Jason's voice was soft but painfully clear. Right beside my ear, he gently nuzzled against me. "I really didn't do anything. That lipstick mark must have accidentally gotten there somehow." His voice carried a hint of grievance along with a tenderness. Hadn't heard from him in a long time. I froze, unsure how to respond. Jason pulled me in tighter. "I was wrong. I won't yell at you like that again." Seeing him like this stirred something in me I hadn't expected. It brought back memories of when we had first started dating, how he used to soften his voice and apologize gently whenever he'd upset me back then. Even when I got mad, most of the time I was just pretending, but now it's the opposite these days. I pretend not to be angry even when I am, even though the air around me was filled with the unpleasant mix of alcohol, cigarettes, and perfume. I couldn't stop my heart from softening as I stood in his arms. The warmth of his embrace and the memories of the past few years began to wear down my resolve. That was the first time I seriously said I wanted to break up. But in the end, it was me who gave in, and it was. From that moment on, that Jason seemed to realize something after every argument. He'd come and hold me, whispering softly in my ear, and every time I let him, every time I melted back into the comfort of his embrace after I ran into Jason outside the school gates that day. He didn't show up again. I thought that was the end of it, but then our mutual friends came looking for me. Seeing them made my head ache. This thing between Jason and Meadowicent need a whole team of people trying to mediate, I said. They exchanged awkward looks. The one I was closest to took my hand and spoke sincerely. We know it's between the two of you, but as your friends, we really think it's a shame. Stayed quiet. Another friend stepped up beside me. Yeah, you two have been through so much together. Are you really just gonna give up? I lowered my gaze, still silent. They glanced at each other, their expressions turning a little tense. The friend holding my hand let out a long sigh. I know it's your decision, but I can really tell Jason doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want to give up, so I should just keep sacrificing myself and swallowing my pride. I suddenly looked. Yupan blurted out. The frustration I had buried deep down the room went awkwardly still. Maybe none of them expected me, someone who always appeared calm and gentle, to suddenly yell like that. My friend, let go of my hand. That's not what we meant. Then let me ask you something. I scanned their faces. You say you're thinking of me, but if Jason had actually cheated, should I forgive him and stay with him too? At that, everyone let out an obvious breath of relief. He didn't cheat. One of them said with conviction. He really didn't. He that assistant Zoe, he already had her transferred. Yeah, another chimed in. She's been gone for a while now. Exactly. So what are you still unhappy about? What are you still unhappy about? I repeated the words in my head, letting them settle. I looked up and gave a soft, bitter laugh. There's so much I'm unhappy about, I said, especially how all of you keep defending him without ever considering me. Their expressions changed. One of them opened their mouth, struggling for a response. After a long pause, they finally said, "That's not fair." I gave a cold snort, gripping my bag tightly. Everything you've done shows exactly what you care about. You only ever think of Jason. You never once acknowledged what I went through in this relationship. With that, I turned to leave. One of them shouted behind me. I stopped, but didn't turn around. After more than 7 years, are you really willing to let it all go? I lowered my eyes and stared at the tips of my shoes. Willing? I paused. My voice was calm. No, I'm not willing, but that's as far as it goes. I started to walk forward, but as soon as I stepped outside the hallway, I ran straight into Jason. His dark eyes locked onto me, calm but unreadable, as if he already knew everything that had just happened inside. I didn't know whether he'd heard what I said, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. I shifted sideways, trying to walk around him, but he moved too, stepping right into my path. I looked up at him, my gaze sharp and cold. "Mr. Reed, what exactly are you trying to do?" Jason stood there silently, eyes stormy with emotions I couldn't name. I didn't want to waste another second standing around like this, so I lifted my foot to push past him, but Jason, like someone with a broken sense of space, stayed right in front of me, blocking me like a wall. He was suffocating me, and I was beyond irritated. I looked up and snapped, "Jason, what the hell is wrong with you?" I glared at him, my heart pounding hard in my chest from the anger. Jason lowered his eyes and after a few tense seconds finally said, "Are you really ready to throw away these 7 years?" I thought he was going to say something piercing, something that would actually hit me where it hurt, but when I heard that flat, emotionless question, I laughed bitterly. Looking straight at him, I enunciated clearly, "You're the one who gave up first." Jason raised his head. I didn't back down either. Meeting his stare that night at the bar, "I heard everything you said. Clearly our mutual friends who were still inside a moment ago had come running out when they saw us locked in a standoff by the entrance. Lynn, let's go inside and talk, okay? It's cold out here." "Yeah, Jason, let's take this inside." Their voices buzzed around us, but I didn't hear a word. I just stood there staring at. He didn't respond to them either, his expressions suddenly a little lost, like he couldn't remember what he'd said. He let out a cold laugh. Maybe he really had forgotten. I scanned the crowd and pointed at one of his friends lingering behind him that night at the bar. "You were the one," he said. It Toyo heard it too. He said he's not thinking about marriage. Jason's friend instantly lowered his head and took a step back. Jason followed the direction of my finger as, if only just now recalling the words that had come out of his own mouth. He turned back toward me, about to explain, but I raised my hand, cutting him off. "Enough, I don't want to hear your explanation." I glanced at the friends surrounding us, my tone heavy with sarcasm. "So you all heard it too? It wasn't me who gave up on these 7 years, it was him, Jason Reed." No one met my eyes. They all looked down. Jason opened his mouth again, still stubbornly trying to reach for my hand, but I took a step back, Avoiding his touch that seemed to trigger something in him, he looked up. His voice urgent. I was just talking nonsense. That night I didn't mean I looked into Jason's eyes, hoping, just hoping, to see a trace of humility or regret. But I didn't see what I was looking for. His eyes were full of urgency, yes, and guilt, but no understanding, no awareness. I shook my head. My heart ached, heavy and muffled. Do you even remember the future you once described to me? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. My nose stung. My chest felt tight with everything I had buried inside. You told me we'd get married because we loved each other. You said once things settled down, we'd raise a cat or a dog together. You painted 1,000 beautiful pictures of a life. I believed in you. Said we'd be patient with each other, that we'd make it. But did you? A line I once saw in a song's comment section floated into my mind. Men are smart. They understand everything. Why you're angry, what could make you happy, but they pretend not to because they just don't love you that much. And wasn't that exactly what Jason did? He knew what made me happy. He knew how to draw out the future I longed for. He gave me dreams, just never the effort to realize them. In the end, I was the only one who ever compromised, the only one who kept forgiving, the only one who kept holding on. All the happiness he once painted so vividly, none of it had ever really existed from the beginning. It had all been an illusion. Warm tears slid down my cheeks before I even realized snapping out of it. I raised my arm and wiped them away. Jason lifted his hand slightly, but in the end didn't reach for me. A second later, he suddenly pulled me into his arms, just like he had so many times before. He still believed that if he just held me close enough, I'd soften, I'd stay. Do you know why I used to love when you held me? I asked. Jason froze. I could feel his body tense, caught in hesitation. I pushed him away with all my strength. He staggered back a bit. Eyes dark. Lynn, he said, voice heavy, can we go somewhere and talk? A wave of bitterness and regret rose in my chest. I took a deep breath, scanned the faces of everyone around us, then looked at him again. My eyes read Jason read. You're selfish, arrogant, always running away when things get hard. I gripped my bag and walked right past him. Jason didn't stop me this time, but behind me, his voice rang out louder than before. Lynn, if you walk away now, then we really have no chance left. Even at the end, he still thought I'd change my mind, that I'd turn around, but I didn't. I kept walking. I didn't look back, and I didn't say a word. The last tear fell, carried away on the wind. Maybe Jason had long since forgotten why I had clung to his embrace for so long. We met because of a game of truth or dare. We were young then, reckless, never thinking about consequences. It happened during a group dinner with my roommates. Someone suggested a game, and I lost that round. The dare, go ask the most attractive guy at the table behind us for his number. So I went. That was when I saw Jason for the first time, sitting at the head of the table, effortlessly standing out, but I only stole glances. I didn't dare approach him. Instead, I walked up to the guy sitting beside him, well-dressed, decent-looking, but much more approachable. Nervous, I asked for his contact. The guy looked a little surprised, but gave it to me. Hurried back to my table, clutching the number like a lifeline. My friends immediately gave me grief. Why didn't you ask the hottest guy, Jason, right? I lowered my head and stayed quiet because I figured a guy like Jason, the one who shines no matter where he is, would never be easy to talk to. But what I didn't expect was for him to stop me when I came out of the restroom later that night. There was a smile tugging at his lips. Hey, what was the dare you guys just did? I bit my lip and blurted it all out. I had to ask the most attractive guy at your table for his number. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Jason looked at me intrigued. So you didn't think I was the most attractive? My face flushed crimson internally. I cursed him. What kind of question was that? Back then, he was so youthful, so brash, that reckless energy could have knocked down walls. But even knowing that, his question still caught me off guard. He shot him a quick look and, feeling awkward, quickly walked away. It should have ended there, just a silly moment at a bar, but it didn't. The bar grew rowdy. More people poured in, and some weren't there to have harmless fun. One man suddenly wouldn't leave me alone. His eyes were glazed over from drinking, and he kept asking for my number. I tried to back away to avoid him. Knowing full well you can't reason with a drunk, I just needed to get away. But then he grabbed me, loud and aggressive, trying to drag me somewhere. I struggled, fought back, but he was too strong. Just as I was about to scream, someone stepped in. A hard kick sent the man stumbling back. I turned and saw Jason. He glanced at me and smiled slightly. The drunk, now furious, scrambled back up in a rage. He grabbed a beer bottle and smashed it on the counter with a roar. He charged. He threw the jagged bottle right at us. I stared at it flying toward me wide-eyed. There was no time to move. Jason suddenly stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. My mind was spinning as he pulled me into his arms, protecting me from the flying shards. There was a crisp, clean scent in his embrace. No trace of alcohol, no suffocating perfumes, no lingering smoke. His arms were warm, and slowly the body heat I'd lost and panic started to return. Don't be scared, I heard him whisper by my ear later. Jason ended up getting hurt. A piece of broken glass had cut his forehead and he had to get 2 stitches. I sat there in the hospital overcome with guilt. He noticed how unsettled I looked and let out a soft chuckle. So does this make me the best looking guy at our table now? This time I didn't feel put off. I smiled slightly and nodded. Yeah, you're the most handsome one. I spent a long time thinking about whether or not I should leave this city. In the end, I chose to stay, but I broke up with Jason. Why did it have to be me who left? I used to blame myself for being naive after that last encounter. I never saw Jason again, just like he said. We never got another chance. I started living a lone life. Wasn't thrilling, but it was steady, fulfilling in its own way. I had thought at 27, I still had time, but when my parents heard about the breakup, they called immediately. You're so foolish. My mom scolded 7 years, and that's it, thankfully. I paused to think before replying honestly. I kind of agree. She exploded on the other end. You put up with so much for him, and you just broke up. Scenes from those years flashed through my mind. The countless times I had swallowed my pride. All the moments I thought about leaving but didn't have the courage to follow through. I looked down and smiled faintly. If anything, I should have ended it sooner. My parents left with no other option. Tried to arrange blind dates. I refused clearly and firmly. I'm not doing that. I told them and they gave up. At least for now. After hanging up, I went back to my life. One I was finally content with after investing so much of myself in a love that consumed me. I couldn't just jump into something new. I wasn't ready to start a new painting just to fill the space on the canvas. I'd rather take my time and live the life I wanted. Bookmark. That relationship had cost me so much. It was time I stopped and learned to love myself again. After Lynn and I broke up, I kept replaying everything in my head. How we met, how we fell in love, the way we used to be. What I couldn't understand was why someone like Lynn, who valued love so deeply, could let go of it so easily. Was it because of Zoe? But I never crossed the line with her. Even when she made little moves toward me, I did everything I could to avoid her. I kept things professional, even warned her to focus on work. But when Lynn found that lipstick in my pocket, she said she wanted to break up. I tried to explain. She didn't want to hear it, so I held her. I knew she liked tugs. I knew she always melted when I held her like that, and I was right. Lynn stopped talking about breaking up, at least for that moment, but I didn't expect her to say it again the next day. I couldn't figure it out. I transferred Zoe out. I even asked her to explain everything, to make it clear that there was nothing between us, but Lynn's response was so calm, so indifferent, like it really had nothing to do with Zoe. At Allie even went to our mutual friends, hoping they could talk some sense into her, but Lynn stayed firm. She still wanted to end it. It wasn't until Lynn repeated the words I'd said at the bar about not thinking about marriage that I finally remembered that careless line I tossed out. Yeah, maybe it was just something I said in the moment, but part of it was true. I hadn't thought seriously about marriage. I thought what we had was good enough. No rings, no mess. Simpler that way, but that didn't mean I wanted to break up. Still, Lynn took it that way, and I thought maybe she was being unreasonable, maybe she was being too much. But when I saw Lynn's reddened eyes, heard her repeat all the promises I once made to her, the future I had painted for us, something guilty stirred inside. May hadn't fulfilled those promises. I really hadn't, but maybe someday could have. Still, Lynn was leaving. I panicked. I hugged her tightly, thinking this time, like before, she would soften, even if just a little, but she didn't. She pushed me away with, she called me selfish, arrogant, and I stood there watching her walk away as anger slowly climbed up from the pit of my stomach. I shattered her name one last time. But she didn't stop. She didn't look back. She just walked away, steady and sure, and only then did the real sting of loss hit me like a slow poison. It began to seep into my chest, one drop at a time. That was the moment I knew there was no next time anymore. 3 years after breaking up with Lynn, my family couldn't wait any longer. They forced me into blind dates. After months of relentless pressure, I finally gave in. I married someone from a similar background, a decent girl. I could at least get along with it. All happened quickly. Everyone was happy. Everyone except me, but I knew this was the choice I had allowed if I hadn't wanted it. No one could have forced me. Not long after we got married, my wife got pregnant one night. She had a craving for skewers from this little food stall near her old high school, so I threw on a coat and went to get them for her. That part of town hadn't changed. It was still bright, bustling, full of street vendors waiting for students to come out of evening classes. I waited at the stall for the skewers, and just as the final school bell rang, the street suddenly filled with chatter and footsteps. My order was ready. I grabbed the bag and turned to head back to my car, and then I saw a familiar figure. Lynn was there holding a bag and chatting with a few girls in school uniforms. Her hair was longer now, flowing down her back, catching the glow of the amber streetlights. There was a softness to her, gentler than I remembered. I stopped walking. All these years I'd avoided every place I thought she might be. Afraid I'd run into her, But still, news of her would find its way to May. Knew she was still single at 30. I heard she bought a large apartment with the help of her parents and her savings, that she adopted a cat she found outside her building, now pampered, plump and beautiful. I admit I never seriously tried to start a new relationship. Some part of me always wondered if there might still be a chance for us. But waiting got tiring eventually. I gave up and rushed into marriage. Lynn hadn't changed at all. In fact, she looked even younger, like the girl I'd met just after college. Maybe I stared too long, because she looked up. Our eyes almost met. I quickly looked away and returned my carry, stared at the bag of still warm skewers in my hands, then glanced out the window. She was gone. I turned the key, started the car, and drove home. There was nothing left to see. Love by this point no longer tied us together. We were just nothing now, and that was